Hello guys, Patrick here, Egg Not Poker. Going to be doing another video today. Going to be focusing primarily again on theory for this one, and we'll be doing another content video carrying on from where we did yesterday for our 2NL tomorrow, and we're also going to be doing some GG stuff soon as well, so keep posted for that. Just a quick shout out just before we start. Again, thank you so much to everyone who's been liking, commenting, subscribing, supporting the channel. If you haven't subscribed, get subscribed right now before we start. Like and put some comments on the video. Get involved. Thank you. So, theory, everyone's favorite part of the story. So, just very quickly here in front of me, I've just got the results of our mini session yesterday, just because I've got to post them. So I thought, well, you know, here we are. We only did just about 100 hands. It's an extremely small sample, but just a nice little start there with about $1.50 up, something like that. That's nice to begin with. So I thought I'd just sort of chuck that in there just to show everybody how we got on. So we're going to move on to the second part of what we focused on a few days ago regarding micro stakes to low stakes exploitative mindsets and what we can do off the tables and think about strategically to then place in our strategies on the tables. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch tabs over here, and we're going to be looking at some of the pointers that we went through last time. However, I have now got my part 2, so we're going to be scrolling up, and here we go. So, disclaimer, unfortunately, we're not going to be going through any practical work today. So if you are hopefully looking to watch me play some more micro stakes and low stakes, etc., today is not going to be that video. There will be another video tomorrow for you, I promise. However, if you're interested in micro stakes to low stakes content, and you're looking to either increase your win rate or attain one, this is the video for you. So what we looked at last time was we were focusing on some exploits, thinking about what kind of sites can we play on, can we find better games, looking for some more strategies that involve flatting pre-flop, thinking about rake, underplaying hands pre-flop and post-flop, etc, etc. What we're going to do this time is we're going to have a few extra exploits in a few spots that we haven't talked about in that previous video. Also, I've had quite a few questions about various different topics regarding this as well, all extremely valid and very, very good questions. I've tried to chuck most of these answers in here in this video today on top, so they should hopefully help you out with those. So anyway, let's get started. So we're going to be focusing primarily on I think one of the most important parts to think about primarily is this frame of mind. I think in 2022, and I think for the last couple of years, to be honest, I think people are very heavily weighted in their mindset towards must make the correct play, must play the solver based style, must be playing watching some guy playing 500 zoom, and I absolutely need to follow this guy, see what he's doing, and then apply it in my 10NL games, my 25NL games, my 5NL games, my $10 spinner goes, etc. No, that's the problem right there. What you need to be understanding is, if you're not beating the game or you're beating it at very low rate, you know, I get it. There are ridiculously nitty populations. Not many of the players in the pool will just sort of drop money to you. It's very hard to actually just get money from players unless you really kind of fridge them. Also, the rake is very high, you know, and players are getting better, right? It's tough. It's not easy to just make money, okay? It's not so much a trap, but it's just very difficult to climb out of, and perhaps not even worth it, touching on what we said about in the last video. However, in terms of I want people to start thinking about this, right? Okay, micro stakes and low stakes are a frame of mind. They're not. You're not playing 200 zoom. You're not playing 500 zoom. You're not playing 100 zoom. Whatever. You don't need to be theoretically minded. All you need to know are fundamentals of the game. You need to know what hands are the best, usually best, and start value betting them. What hands are usually behind, and start folding them. And thinking about the exploitations of the player pools. If everyone's very tight, usually has it, you need to start exploiting those people. If you have to overfold, then that's an exploitation that you need to take. If you need to be bluffing in certain spots, then you need to be taking those spots. But there is no. I think a lot of people have this kind of tendency where they go, these games are just ridiculous. You're not going to make any money here. You know, I'm losing, but it's fine because it's not my fault. You know, it's everyone else's fault. They never bluff here. I'm always calling with top of range and lose. You know, I'm just unlucky. Well, even if those statements may be true, to some degree, you need to be changing your mindsets and focusing mentally. This is a mental game thing. You need to be saying, well, you need to turn these problems and situations. You need to find resolutions. You need to find strategies. You need to find ways of getting around them and overcoming them and pushing forward, rather than just being stuck down and focusing on the negatives. I think it's a mental game thing. I mentioned this in one of the first videos I ever did about 3 months ago, where I was just saying I think mental game is just a massive leak for most players, even if they're already winning. And God forbid for the people who don't win, that mental game then compounds itself even further. I think you need to start saying to yourself, look, in terms of theory, and I don't want to blab too much because I want to just push forward, but you need to start thinking about this in terms of, like, let's think about the Hunger Games. It's something pretty damn close. You know, you're thrown into some ridiculous environment. Boom, those are the kids who are trying to attack you with axes and fucking throwing knives and God knows what. You know, you've got to fight to survive, haven't you? You know? It's kind of the same. Like, you're just thrown in an environment with a bunch of nits and maybe 1 or 2 decent players, kind of, and loads of kind of like trashy, nitty, bad regs and some nitty, bad fish. And it's like getting blood out of a stone, right? Well, you've got to figure out ways to counter that to survive. It's just all there is to it. There's no secret formula. You just have to stop paying really bad players and make sure you generate the most value from them. It's just that simple. Basically, I would say it like this, okay? It's about volume and it's about speed. If you can get a few fundamental exploits down, so for example, we're thinking about value, okay? We're just pushing on until we get a value spot, getting a small to medium pot, excellent. If we can get a large one by fridging someone or just generating a lot of EV from a spot, perfect. And then we move on to the next spot. We've got a situation which is relatively marginal. Do I make a big call hit? No. Ignore it, move on to the next valuable position. And again, and again, and again, and again. It's not so much about the breakdown of the hand strategically. It's just you're just moving, you're just kind of stepping on stones until you're just kind of like panning for gold almost. You know, oh, loads of dust, you know, loads of rubbish. No, those are rubbish. No, haha, aces. Haha, set. Haha, bluffing spot. Again, again, again. And just keep going. That's basically it. If you can get your mental game stable, where you can get in a situation where you can mass table, get the strategy down to a T, and it's not strategic play, the strategy is playing like a potato. But if it's working and you're not doing it in and you're grinding a small win rate, then compound that with multiple tables and keep pushing forward. Get that win rate to a level, get a certain amount of money in your bankroll, and get the fuck out and move on to the next one. And again and again and again, and then move on to the next one. That's how you have to see it, like a computer game. Rather than just getting pissed off because people are nits. Yes, people are nits. Yes, people always have it. But if you're just sitting there complaining, what's the point? You know, you need to sort of find a way to deal with it. So here we are. So we've said about speed and volume. We've got flies everywhere. But generally, we're just in a situation where we're in a mindset where we just don't want to pay nits. We don't want to pay the regs because they're not bluffing enough. I'm talking about subjectively like 2NL to 10NL. When you start climbing like 16, 25, 50, 100, then you need to start playing more strategically and less just pure exploit to an extent. But bear with me. But in micro to low stakes, you absolutely need to have this as a priority. Is you're just looking for value spots and situations where you can bin opponents off their kind of capped marginal ranges, get away from a spot, get some value for a spot, and move on to the next. Again. Simplicity and a mindset change and strengthen are what's required. If you can keep that mental stability and not get pissed off because a nit gets there, a fish gets there on you, or a nit has it when you've got a set, it doesn't matter, you know. Move on to the next situation. You're in soft games. Even though they're tight and they are appalling, they are soft. You are not having people 5-bet bluff jam on you. You are not having people triple check the fucking nuts to overbet jam on you. You are not having people cold 4-bet bluff. You are not having people check raise aggressively. You're in soft games. And if you cannot beat soft games, you are doing it wrong. It's that simple. So we're here, and that's what we want to get from these videos. Don't want to rant, okay? But it breaks my heart because there's so many people that are really, really good at this game and just cannot get that mental stability down. They cannot get past their ego. Oh, but I have to call here because I'm top of range. Fuck top of range. Top of range is a trap. If the guy's top of range has your top of range dominated, out. Moving on. So one of our exploitative spots is we want to think about attacking a lot facing checks. So I've briefly mentioned this in a few videos before, and on the actual content video yesterday. When people in the micro to low stakes are generally checking, I'm not saying they can't have good hands and decent ranges, but most of the time, I would say subjectively, but closer to almost just pure fact, is a massive proportion of the people who are checking just have the same range. They have ace high, they don't generally have king queen high unless it's an ace high board, but they generally have like strong ace highs. They have low to mid pocket pairs, marginal made hands, decent semi kind of, not so much semi bluffs, but semi kind of marginal made hands and semi relevant equity hands, backdoor flush draw, king high, bottom pair, gut shot, etc. Very, very showdown orientated. So what that means is you just need to attack people. Don't attack them with those with tiny bets and probes. Fucking nuke these people. If you've got information, you're saying that they're checking back a lot of the time, calling and then calling turn bet, but they're folding rivers a lot. Just get involved. Like overbet these flops and turns. Don't like kind of wait to the river and then make some kind of like half-assed attempt at a c-bet on the river and see if you can make them fold like fourth pair. It's not going to work. You have to kind of tell these people, I have a hand, get out the way. And they'll go, you have a hand, get out, I'll get out the way. If you kind of try and get funny with these, people tend to go, you've checked one or two streets. If you had it, you would have just bet, right? You just have to be really, really obvious and really simple. Just, the guy's checked. I know this guy's a bad player. I know he's a nit or whatever. I know he's got no protected checks. The turn doesn't change anything. In. And then on the river, nothing changes. In. That is the whole point. If you can just absolutely bulldoze these people off of their marginal made hands every time, because they're never going to cool down because they know that populations always have it, even better for you, attack those pots. There are so many red line situations that you would just win 6 big blinds here, 5 big blinds there, 10 big blinds. Sometimes you'll get caught. Sometimes someone might trap you. That's fine. It's okay because we're not going to do it in, and we're going to be absolutely in the clouds with the amount of pots that we're taking down. We don't care that, it's a good thing that people know that we are actually bluffing. So when we have it, again, we might actually start getting paid. Even better. I would suggest as well, another thing here is to start using hotkeys. So the thing with hotkeys is if you're new to the game, don't, right? You just want to get used to making the game as simple as possible. Don't have crazy HUDs, don't have crazy amounts of hotkeys and make the game really difficult. It's difficult enough. If you've been playing for a while, I would highly consider having your opening sizes / bet sizes. I would prioritize your bet sizes post-flop because it's easy just to sort of punch in or click on the pre-flop sizes. But your betting sizes and your percentages post-flop for hotkeys. So I've got a Razor Naga, or I used to have a Razor Naga. I now have a Corsair mouse, which has got God knows how many buttons on it, probably 20. You don't need a fucking cyborg mouse, but just even some keyboard keys. I would bind fold to your middle mouse button, where you can just, boom, move to the next hand, rather than have to scroll your mouse over to fold and click. That's 2 seconds that you lose every single hand. And it's the same with your bet size. Every time you scroll over to a bet size and you have to think, oh, I think I'm going to bet 2.3. Click 2.3, enter. That's 3 or 4 seconds you've lost every single hand. You're multi-tabling, even more time that you've lost. That's taking time away from your decisions. You have a goddamn small time bank in stars. Make the most of it. Your bet sizes, just get out of that mindset. I guarantee you, between 2 and 5 seconds a hand, it's a fucking lot. If you do that 100 times, how many hands have you kind of attained on top of your daily dose of hands? Your volume is going to massively improve, and the quality of volume and the speed as well. Disclaimer, I have folded aces pre-flop before, okay? It will happen to you one time, but that's the cost of doing battle, I think, in terms of compromise. But you need to start thinking about speed and volume, and to do that, you need hotkeys. You need to be multi-tabling and using hotkeys, otherwise it's awful. You're going to be in situations where you're tanking and thinking on 2 different tables at the same time, and you want to raise, but you have to physically go over and raise and click and raise, and how much do I want to raise? You've timed out on the other table, you're flustered. No. Keep using hotkeys. Really good. Really, really efficient. So the next one is considering flatting 3 bets with death range. So we talked about flatting previously. There's a few disclaimers with this because I don't want to just start telling people to flat every single hand in every spot because it's really bad, especially with rake. But hear me out. When you've got some considerations, say for example when you've got top of range, like ace queen suited, ace king, queens plus, jacks plus, etc., really top of range, like sort of 3-4%, maybe slightly less, really good hands. Start thinking about the player types that are opening and you've 3-bet, slash that, you know, maybe they open, you 3-bet them, you open, they 3-bet you, and you're thinking about 4-betting. Look at, if you've got HUD information, again, this is really good for things like stars. If you've got, I think people are super aggressive, kind of aggro-tard players that open really wide, that you open really wide, you open your hands, they 3-bet you really wide, right? They're 3-betting like 12%, 14%. But check their fold to 4-bet stat, because if they're going to fold almost always to your 4-bet, going, you 4-bet me, you must have aces and kings, fuck this, I'm going to fold. Well, actually, you could keep most of their range in that 3-bets you like king 10 off, king jack off, you know, 4-5 suited, ace 10 off, whatever, even like, you know, suited Broadway. And then just destroy them post-flop. You know, sometimes you'll get punished for it, but it's going to make a lot of value post-flop as well. And it's a really, really nice exploit versus really aggressive opponents. On the flip side is when you've got opponents, say, for example, you open, they 3-bet you, and you can see their 3-bet stat is like 5 or 6%. And then you look at their fold to 4-bet stat, and it's really high. And you're like 100 bigs or so. This is a tough one because there's some opponents they're 3-bet, you've got aces and kings, they're 3-betting you with like 3%. You're doing okay against that range. Okay, fine. You just kind of want to just get it in against queens and ace king. Fine. But a lot of the time you're going to be 4-betting hands like kings and aces, etc. And the people who are going to 3-bet you with a correct range, like, you know, queens or like ace king. But for example, if I 3-bet someone with tens and they 4-bet me and I look at their 4-bet stat which says 1%, I'm just going to fold. And I don't mean me subjectively, but I think a lot of people will see 4-bets as a really strong hand, just in general, as a perception at micro to low stakes especially. It's just people are 4-betting really death ranges. So consider starting to have some traps where you're opening and calling 3-bets, especially in late positions against kind of really aggressive opponents. Even marginal ones, just to have them in there. And also just spots where you're just like allowing kind of aggro donuts to do it in, but you're also allowing really, really tight opponents to not just completely get away from even hands like queens and ace king, or, you know, this hurts me to say it, but just in general, like, it's very difficult to make money at like 2NL to 10NL, for example, especially getting it in pre-flop with hands like kings and aces. You will get people, but it's just, oh, the guy had ace king and he had kings, well done, you know. Whereas a lot of spots you'll find people will 3-bet you with hands like ace jack, ace queen, flop top pair, and you've just got ace king and you've got aces, or you've got kings on a 7-7-3 board in a 3-bet pot. They're betting jacks and you check raise, they get it in. Oh, you've got kings, what the hell, you didn't 4-bet me pre. Things like this. It's a bit of a funny one, and it depends on the players you're against, but it can be really beneficial to have some of these kind of mega traps, for better or for worse. Moving forward then, so attacking people who over c-bet, or over c-betters, however you want to say it, with more check raises and then barreling more good turns on top of that. So basically you need to start thinking as quite a large exploit. This is also theory as well, but they come together. It's people who c-bet, you know, I'm telling you to c-bet a lot in these stakes, but that's because you're watching these videos and you want to become good players. You know, you want to learn how to exploit micro stakes, do shitloads of c-betting, you know, perfect. But then at the same time, people who are doing the same thing are then also learning to fold to aggression, which means you then need to be countering that by being the aggressor. If you're looking at a stat and you've got, right, this guy in the cutoff is he's raised, I've defended the big blind, the board's XXX, it doesn't matter, he c-bets flop. Let's have a look at his c-bet percentage in a single raise pot. Oh, it's 90%. Well, let's have a look at its fold to check raise. Oh, look, it's 90%. These are examples, but they're quite relevant in the percentages, I would think, at these low levels. Is you need to start thinking about having things like bottom pair, gut shots, backdoor hands like backdoor straight and flush draws, as well as your direct equity, like, you know, direct semi-bluff check raises. And then also you've got your value mixed into them as well. You've got your sets, you've got your strong, really strong top pairs, you've got two pairs, pair and flush draws, you name it, it's in there. But just generally, don't just be in auto call mode or auto fold mode. Don't just go, flop bottom pair, call, check the turn, fold. Well, think about having some raises. Like this is theory based, but actually quite relevant in exploit. Is some of these under pairs, like say for example, you open pocket fours, you get 3-bet, you call, the board's like king, queen, 7. sometimes you're going to have queens and king queen and queens and big combo draws here. Add some underpairs into your check raises. Add some bottom pairs into your bluffing ranges on pots as well. It's really good. You're blocking. Sorry, I'm trying to move out of the way, so I'm not quite in the way of the Word document. These bottom pairs and under pairs are really good bluffs. Your backdoor equity and your gut shots and your backdoor straight and flush combo. These are really good hands, especially in populations that it's over c-bet and overfold versus check raise, or just raise in general. Really, really good to have. On top of that, when you then get into turn and river spots, you go, oh, well, what the fuck am I doing now? I've check raised a gut shot, a backdoor flush draw, turned a gut shot. What do I do now? Keep going. Now you want to have a lot of turn sizes that are quite big. You might have some overbets representing good hands, and then moving forward from there. I'm not going to sit here and go deep dive into massive depth in strategic play. It's just general exploitative concepts and mindsets. But as a thing, you just cannot sit there and wait to check call and check fold. I promise you, even the tightest players are still bluffing you in terms of just c-betting, because they're just going to c-bet a lot of hands, even though their ranges might be slightly tighter than other players. But you really need to think about having these counter moves to just win more pots. Like, if you can just keep winning loads of small, consistent, like between 3 and 15 big blind pots, one way or another, that is the edge. It's not about waiting for a set to check raise and hope the guy stacks off with aces. It's nothing to do with that, anymore. The game doesn't play like that. If you're winning loads of small and medium pots and you are not calling the fish and the nits, you are going to just make money. To some extent, relative. But that's what you're going to do, and that's how you're going to find your way out of these micro stakes. Whereas if you're just sitting here going, the solver means I've got to stack off with my tens, the guy's opened the button, I've 3-bet him, he's 4-bet me, I've got to go all in. Well, let's have a look at this guy's 4-bet stat first. Oh, it's 1 over 45 sample. Sorry, we might have 45 situations he's been given the opportunity to 4-bet and hasn't 4-bet you. So he's 4-betting you like 1% or less. Well, it's probably fucking aces or kings, isn't it? A lot of the time. And then when you get it in with tens and he's got death range and all the time he's got ace, king, kings, aces, queens every single time, you keep getting it in with ace, king, tens, jacks, nines because you're supposed to. Oh, I'm just unlucky, I keep running into it. Well, actually, no. You're forcing artificial callers against... Let me say it like this. Hi, my name's Pat. I'm going to play aces, kings and queens only. And then, hi Dave, you're going to play 9s, 10s and jacks only. We're going to go all in every time. Who do you think's going to win? Well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? It's kind of the same thing, right? Dave is probably going to win, right? Or is Pat going to win? It depends who's got the best hands all the time. You're not playing 500, 200, 100, and L, even 100 at some points. Is not quite like this. But people don't play correct ranges at microstakes. No one's got a fucking clue. Everyone's just playing whatever and just generally playing really tight and not really doing anything, wondering why nothing happens. People just wait to have the nuts, and you need to just be kind of in and out, in and out, in and out, little bits here, little jabs there, and moving on. Rather than these people who are just fucking swinging for a James Bond finale every single hand, waiting for a set. Haha, I can check raise now. Oh, I didn't get any value for it. Moving on. Doubling and tripling more often in general, I want to be very simple with this. Just c-betting is really great, right, in general. But then if you're going to c-bet often and you're going to c-bet quite small most of the time, people are still going to float you. At microstakes, people will still float you with hands, especially if you bet small. Especially fish. They're not just going to fold, backdoor straight draw and 2 overs. They're not going to fold ace-jack on the 3-9-7 board because you've bet 25%. They're going to call you, right? So you need to consider having loads more doubles and even triples in a lot of spots, because people's range is just kind of going to fall out their arse a bit. Generally in single raise pots, doubling and tripling is really effective. In 3-bet, I would say let's start with 3-bet pots. I would be careful about what types of opponent first that you're against. I would be concerned because a lot of people underplay hands like queens, ace, king, and don't 4-bet in a lot of situations. So their ranges often are much stronger than they appear and are very nutted. So be very cautious with what kind of ranges you're attacking and what type of players you're choosing to continue barreling against. That's something where when we do the content, we'll come across lots of those spots. We'll talk through them as we get to them. But just as a generalization, single raise pots, loads of betting and barreling because ranges are wide. 3-bet pots against constricted ranges, be careful. Think about blockers as a priority. Think about villain type. Just be conscious about board textures. If you're using large sizes on flops and turns and still being called, be careful, because generally if you're using larger sizes and getting to rivers, your opponents are going to be a bit more bottlenecked. One thing to think about as well is if you're getting in 3-bet scenarios, you've 3-bet king 5 suited, because apparently that's a really good hand of 3-bet, which it absolutely is. You know, the board's ace high or the board's queen high, or king high if you've bluffed a different type of hand class, and you've 3-bet and you're being called by a weak nitty player, and you've bet the flop, you've barreled the turn quite heavy, and you think about jamming river or betting river, be careful, because these people's 3-bet ranges generally contain really strong pairs and really nasty broadways, like ace king a lot, ace queen a lot, suited mostly. So be careful trying to think about folding them off those type of ranges, because they're not going to. You're not supposed to be making them fold top pair. Good top pairs. In theory or in exploit, you're meant to be trying to make people fold weak and marginal hands against 5-card scare cards, which means things like flushes come in, tri-straights come out. So it's like 10, queen, king, 2-4, right? Something like that. Or it's a mono board, right? Or a flush comes in on the turn. Those are types of spots where you can attack people with blockers. Not so much where you're trying to blast people off top pair. It doesn't work. Over bluffing doesn't mean you put the guy on ace queen or ace king on an ace high board and go, fuck him. If I 3-bet him, overbet flop, overbet turn and jam the river, what's he going to do? You can't call. They can and they should and they will. So be careful with that, okay? That's something I used to do. Before I even contemplated even thinking about how to play at the game in general. I was a terrible loser years and years back. I just thought I could run people down with the nuts all the time. Like, you can't do it. People aren't going to fold top of range. And then I would get angry that they would fold. They wouldn't fold. Sorry, I was like, I would scoff at people. You've called with top of range? You swine. You absolute scallywag. You scoundrel. How have you done this? You need to think about this, because it's really important not to over bluff into people when they've got good ranges. Moving on, because I want to get this done in the next 10 minutes, start using really smart river bluff sizes, so small sizes, in a lot of situations where draw heavy boards are bricked. This is single raise or 3-bet. You don't have, if you want to consider bluffing rivers or even contemplating over bluffing with a not so great candidate, say for example you've opened, or it's a 3-bet pot, either or, the board's got a flush draw and a straight draw on it, you've just got like ace queen or something, you've bet and barreled, whatever, the river completely bricks, they check to you on the river, here we are. If you're going to bluff, you don't have to nuke these rivers. You can actually go to between like 10 and 20%, because you could just target the weakest part of their ranges. So for example, if you know that their range is going to contain a lot of straight and flush draws that get here, open enders, flush draws, bottom pair and flush draw, whatever, things like that, you don't have to bet massive to make that fold. All you're going to do is bet big, and the times they have it, they're going to call or raise, whatever, and when they don't, they're going to fold. Most of the time, honestly, this comes into theory at the same time, is these really, really 10 to 20% micro bets just get the job done against the hands that are supposed to fold. Oh, I missed my straight and flush draw, whatever, I have to fold. It doesn't matter what you bet, I can't call. They fold. And strategically, you would then start incorporating having some death traps where you actually bet 10% deceptively as a trap. That's not something to talk about today. That's in Solverland, but that would kind of counter an argument, which I know you're going to tell me, is well, if I start 10%ing, am I not going to start inducing villain to start raising? Well, technically, yes, in some situations. However, I think in general, okay, hold me to ransom if I'm wrong here, but I think at micro no stakes, people don't tend to attack small bets when they've got missed draws. I think they attack them more when they think you just don't have anything, or you just would have bet bigger if you had it, but they've got like a bluff hand themselves. I think a missed draw generally folds. I from what I've seen anyway, I don't think they check, see you bet 20% on the river and go, everything's missed here. I know what I'll do. I'll go all in. No, I think they mostly just fold, and they're more likely to go all in a different type of scenario. They may even just turn a hand into a bluff more often, which is quite interesting for a micro stakes situation anyway. I wouldn't worry about it. But just generally, these little sizes on rivers are really effective. They're not even exploitative either. They're actually more strategic. But it's something to think about and start chucking in. Giving up more river, we've already gone over this one. I'll say it, but we've already gone over it. Is giving up more river bluffs versus type villains on ace/king X boards, especially in 3-bet pots after double barrel in bigger sizes. We've already said that, so I won't say it again. Generalization, we've bottlenecked their range by 3-betting, betting the flop, betting large, or over-betting turn. They've still called. It's a pretty dry board. You could just narrow their range down to top of range. When you have it, excellent, stick it in. And apart from that, you just basically give up because, unless you have very relevant information that they give up rivers, they don't tend to when you 3-bet and bet large. It's more of a single raise thing, or on very dynamic board textures where it's like 4-4-7-3 in a 3-bet pot where their best hand is something like tens or jacks, and they might have a fold to river bet more often than not because they don't want to go all the way with nines or tens or jacks, even queens sometimes. But I wouldn't prioritize that. I would think people mostly call with the better parts of their range anyway, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. Opening slightly larger overall to counter rake. This is really important. So just generally don't min open, don't 2.1, don't 2.2. A minimum of 2. If you've got 100 to 150 bigs, you kind of want to start 2.5/3xing in most situations because you're prioritizing fold equity pre and you're not trying to incentivize people to call. People like passivity. They like calling. They like folding. They don't mind c-betting. But people like giving up, people love folding, but people do not like being the aggressor themselves. They like following action because it's easy. If you're a weak losing player, it's just really easy to press the call button or wait for good hands to press the raise button than it is to be aggressive themselves. So don't incentivize them to call with weaker marginal hands by betting small. If they're going to call anyway, excellent, just open tighter and raise larger. It's just that simple. That's the only way to get around it. Especially on stars and places like GG where the rake starts going up really significant, you need to be really careful with these types of ranges that you're opening, or also just the types of players that you're attacking. Don't just absolutely do it in by opening really small, incentivizing people to call, get to post-flop scenarios way too often, and just start making life more difficult for yourself with these most of your opens, when you could have just won it pre without any rake or hassle. So that's always good. Moving forward, overstealing versus the blinds in the cutoff, the button and the small blind, especially the cutoff. I think a lot of people think I'm on the button or the small blind, I need to attack, which is true, but the cutoff is really powerful. People don't float or attack any position much in general, but when you open the cutoff, I think people still appreciate that as being a really tight range, more so than, obviously the button or the blinds especially, but people do tend to fold when you open in the cutoff. I found this a lot, actually, at most stakes. So don't be afraid to kind of widen your cutoff opening range as well. Get some hands like Queen 5 suited in there, some 7-9 suited, get some like Jack 7 suited in there, get your like all your suited King X in there. Start opening this up, like Ace 5/Ace 7, King 9/King 10 off. Start opening more often with these types of hand classes in the cutoff. Sorry. And on the flip side, reassert aggression with 3-bets against these positions. So moving into overstealing against the cutoff, the button, the small blind. Just think about it like this, right? In the micro and low stakes, it's all about red line. It's all about, unless you bump into a fish and you get your nugget of gold, perfect. But most of the time, it's just tiptoeing and winning little pots and just not doing it in. Surviving, right? You don't need to call down super light, and you don't need to go crazy with your 3-bets, but just start considering being more aggressive as a standpoint. When people attack you in the button and the small blind, especially, look at their attack, look at their attempt to steal percentages, look at their fold to 3-bet percentages. It's really important, because if you can start identifying who is attacking you more often than not, and then how to counter them. Oh, I know Eggnog's attacking the button and the small blind all the time, and he's folding to 3-bets all the time, then just 3-bet more often. Perfect. Like, use that as your baseline strategy. Just get out of this kind of like passivity, passive style knittery situation that you're in, and be the aggressor. Like, get some blood in there and, go for it. I would say just attack. Almost finished. Defending extremely tight pre-flop in the blinds versus early and middle position, especially. Be really cautious and give massive respect, especially at micro to low stakes, people who open UTG and hijack don't look at ranges that often and go, I can open king 5 suited here, I can open like queen 9 suited here, I can open 9 10 suited, I can open 5s through deuces at some frequency. People just open what they open. Just have an idea of their VPIP and PFR and have a look at their generalized range. You don't have to sit there and study, oh, what does 10% of range mean? I don't fucking know, let's have a look at the chart. You just have to say, if the guy's opening 10% of hands under the gun, he's quite tight. If he's opening something like 17% under the gun, that's quite a lot of hands. At least you're getting a bit of a broad spectrum about the types of hand ranges that they're opening, because it's super important. If you know that this guy's opening a really tight range, well, why are you defending a really wide one? If this guy's opening a lot of marginal hands and folding to 3-bets quite often, well, why are you just flatting a lot of these weaker marginal hands when you can attack them? And on the flip side, if they're opening too often, you can attack them more as bluffs and defend more with your stronger hands as deceptive traps, because you're just going to let them do it in. Effectively, think about this. Pat versus Dave again. Dave's got all the best hands all the time and Pat's got all the weaker ones going on to the flop. Well, who do you think's going to win more often than not? It's quite obvious, right? If someone's got the better hand, they're generally going to win one way or another. Almost done. Start folding more on all streets where villains use large sizes. So this is really good. Absolutely, post-flop is a priority in terms of thought processes when it comes to percentages that people bet. A lot of people just do the small C bet, whether they're single raise, 3-bet, 4-bet, whatever. People kind of get that. Whether they understand why they're doing it, probably not, but they just kind of get it. A small C bet it doesn't risk very much and it gets the job done more often than not. Perfect. It's like a setup, right? Setup bet or probe. But when people start sledging flops, turns, and especially rivers like 80%, 90% pot, and I mean this generally against nits and recreationals primarily, really strong hands, guys. Really strong hands, unless you have an exact read. People who are better players don't tend to overbet. I would say at the low to micro stakes to low stakes, they're not overbetting for value that often. They actually, if anything, regs tend to overbet bluff too much, way too much. Some do it just with the nuts every time, so do keep an eye out for that. And again, that's where notes come in. But you should really be considering some of these spots where people are, sledging turns and rivers. You need to think about the player type. Have I got information? Do I have previous hands? Do I have any notes? Does the guy c-bet flop and then turn 100% at a time? Okay, these considerations must start coming in. If you're 1 and 2 tabling, this is a priority and a must. If you're 4 tabling, you just need a glance, right? But if you're single and duo tabling, this absolutely has to be a thing. Otherwise, there's no point. You must start identifying people's sizes and what they're doing and what type of hand classes they have. It's really important. And then finally, folding a lot versus aggression in multi-way spots, and also being aggressive versus passivity in multi-way pots. If people are really passive and kind of nitty and tight in multi-way pots, which they always are, you must be bluffing. You cannot get to showdown with really crappy hands expecting to lose when people have checked round on flops and turns. People are not trapping unless they have astronomical hands. People are absolutely folding, but you must kind of start attacking flops and turns. You can't get to the river and just say, oh, I'm just going to bet 2/3 pot and it's check round, flop and turn, I'll give it a stab. You must usually do 2 barrels at least to get this done. But on the flip side, when people, especially tighter players, are attacking multi-way pots on flops and especially turns and rivers, they just have it a lot, right? So you have to be very careful with how far you tread. Just having third pair and just going, they bet a third, I guess I have to call, and then just folding 100% of the time on turns and rivers, you're just bleeding money. You have to know why you're calling and what you're calling against, and you have to have some kind of information against the player. So to finish, and then we're done. Sorry this has taken longer than I wanted it to. I wanted to try and get done in 30 to 35. This is going to be more like 40 to 42, unfortunately. It is what it is. It's just the HUD. I had a couple of questions about the HUD I'm using, so let's just change this. Bear with me 1 second. No, that's tracker. Boom, 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 boom. Sorry guys, 1 second. HUD profiles. There we go. So this is going to be like, whoa, Matrix, and I apologize for that. With this, I just want people ask me, well, what kind of tags and what kind of HUDs do you use? I'm just going to skim over this within 30 seconds and then we're done. The priority with your HUD if anything, I would take away almost 3/4 of this and focus on just the top couple of layers. I just think the most priority, the highest prioritized stats for you for micro to low stakes, especially player name, obviously, how many hands you have on the opponent, VPIP, PFR, aggression factor is kind of like on and off. I don't mind with aggression factor. I wouldn't take it as gospel. And then how often they're attempting to steal and what percentage of hands they're opening from all positions. That is all you need as a priority, okay? The only extra ones I might add are things like 3-bet, fold to 3-bet, 4-bet, and fold to 4-bet. I wouldn't worry about 5-betting at the micro stakes and low stakes. Those are the absolute necessities. You only need those in order to kind of use the HUD correctly. If you want to deep dive, other really important stats are things like how often they're 3-betting in certain positions, things like they're 3-betting in the small blind, for example. How often are they re-stealing in the blinds versus a button open? That's quite a good one. How often do they check raise flops, turns, and rivers? How often do they squeeze in late position? 4-betting and 5-betting. Folding versus a flop check raise, turn check raise, river check raise. How often do they c-bet all flops, turns, and rivers? How often do they get to showdown? How often do they win on showdown is really important as well. WST and W% SD. C-betting and folding to c-bets. Float betting, which means how often do they bet when checked to. These are quite relative. Folding to turn and river c-bets. And then folding to, what are my bottom ones, if I remember off the top of my head? I don't remember them. Folding to floats. So, for example, they check, we bet the flop. They check the turn, we bet the turn. They check the river, we bet the river. How often do they fold to floats? That is my HUD. So, if anyone wants this on PT4, I don't mind sending this to you. Take it. You know, it will help you. But it's quite powerful. It's a bit big. So, you know, it's a bit scary, okay? But it's there. And then just for the final point, I promise, and then we're done, is just the note taking. So edit player notes. Here we go. So with the notes, let me just find this. Here we go. With the notes, with my color codes, I actually can't see this. This is really tilting. I've got a couple of different color codes here. I basically have it like this. Can I do this? No. I just use variations. So I use green, blue, orange. Okay, so green is a recreational player, and then I mark that between a lighter and darker, a lighter, medium, and dark green between passive fish, tight fish, aggressive fish. And then it's the same for whale, then it's the same for reg, and then I have an extra tag for what I perceive as a winning or strategically approaching, strategically minded opponent who's like 4-bets with bluffs, 5-bets with bluffs, check raises, like double check into check raise, double check raise. Anyone who's doing any kind of real technical lines, I then add them into those spots as well. And then on top of that, I just add notes. If someone's 4-betting and folding to my 5-bet jam, I know that they potentially have 4-bet bluffs, for example. If someone's 5-bet gone all in, I've called with kings and he shows me ace-5 suited, I must note that player. Things like that. Really, really important points. So that's what we're going to finish on. So, I can breathe. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please, 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 before you jump off, please like, please subscribe, please comment on the videos. It makes a massive difference. The algorithm fucking loves comments. It loves likes. Excuse me. It loves all of it. Please, please, please tell me how you've got on if you've got here. What kind of information is relative? Ask your questions. I will give you as much response as I can. I will see you in the next one tomorrow, and we will do another content video. 2-L. God help us all. See you in the next one.